for the demonetization of silver as a standard money. The net result was that the value of the silver was going down in terms of the gold. So therefore, naturally rupee value will be going down in terms of the pound sterling. That is how there is a decline in the value of the foreign exchange. Decline in the foreign exchange rate. Here, please remember, foreign exchange rate in those days was defined as number of units of pound sterling paid for 1 unit of rupee. That was the definition at that time. Therefore, exchange rate fall means it is the currency depreciation. If it is intentionally done by the government, we call it a devaluation. If it is through market forces like this, we call it as a depreciation. Today we are defining exchange rate in a different way. That is, number of rupees paid for 1 unit of a dollar or 1 unit of a pound sterling, something like that. But Ambekar, for his thesis, that definition was number of units of pound sterling that are paid for 1 unit of rupee. In those days, rupee was very strong. This was the exchange rate definition. So exchange rate was falling. So when the exchange rate was falling, the burden was so heavy because India had an obligation to pay to the England in terms of gold. Gold for various reasons. Most of the European people were working in India, and you have to meet their salaries, which you have to pay in terms of the gold, particularly when they are leaving for England. And second one is you have to pay a lot of money for the imports from England. As a result, the gold payments burden has gone up like anything. He has also estimated exclusively what was the burden on account of exchange rate itself. I am not mentioning the figure. He has also estimated that in his thesis. And therefore, the burden has been multiplied. British government has taken various measures to control the situation, but it could not, although it has increased the duties and something like that, even then it could not do that, and it was compelled to go for a kind of a public debt, and the public debt burden has gone up like anything on account of this. But simultaneously, the trading class found during this period an interesting phenomena that there is a bounty from the exports from India, particularly to England, because of the fall in the exchange rate. Exports were promoted. Of course, we also teach now this devaluation and currency depreciation is supposed to promote the exports or something like that. So in a line with the theory, it has happened that the exports were promoted. Not only just volume of the exports were promoted, were expanded, but the exports happened to be more manufactured exports also. There was a qualitative change in the exports also. But here, interesting observation of Ambedkar is, you see, with the trading class was under the impression that whatever the benefit they got, it is because of the fall in the exchange rate. But Ambedkar argues that it is not just because of the fall in the exchange rate. Fall in the exchange rate, that is currency depreciation, has a different kind of implications for the society. But this benefit is for the reason that in India, prices were rising, but wages were not rising. Therefore, the producers do not have an obligation to pay higher wages to the workers. Therefore, they have a lot of margin between the prices and the cost incurred in the production. This is how they are getting the benefit from this kind of a trade. And at the same time, he says, this kind of a depreciation, currency depreciation, has caused a kind of a negative implication for the society. Because of this depreciation, there was an inflation. On account of the inflation, higher rate of inflation, there is a redistribution of income, and the income has been redistributed between the richer classes and the poor classes, because poor classes' wages do not rise in line with the inflation or rise in prices. And therefore there is a redistribution of income. The suffering class is the poor class, and therefore no righteous government should resort to this kind of a measure of devaluation in improving the balance of payments. He emphasized it somewhere in early 1920s. This is from his DSc. And this fact we were of course discussing much nowadays. Therefore, in those days itself he has pointed out that devaluation or depreciation is a kind of a negative effects for the society, particularly the poor section would suffer on account of this. This is the point I would like to mention. Other thing, of course, in his model of development, as you know, I don't want to go into the details because there will be different sessions. Education is supposed to play very important role, very crucial role. He believed that education acts as an agent of social change and also for the emancipation of the depressed sections. It is a main instrument, it is an agent of change for him. And also it enables these depressed sections, education, to fight for their rights, social, economic and political. Therefore, state should have an obligation to see that education reaches everybody. And since you are treating with the unequals, state should also give a kind of an unequal treatment to bring them to the equal. That is the point he was making in the Bombay Legislative Council, particularly when there was a debate on education. I am not going into the details. And he has also compared at that time the comparative advancement of the education of these different groups on the basis of the Bombay Presidency census data. Bombay Presidency census data has classified the people into 4 classes. The advanced class, that is advanced Hindus, on the basis of the ranking in education, something like that. And actually, it is the intermediary class that is number 1 as far as the population is concerned in the ranking. That is Marathas and other intermediary communities. That is number 1. Different classes stands number 2 in terms of population. And Muslims stands 3rd in terms of population in ranking. And Brahmins and other advanced castes stands 4th in terms of population. But when you take the ranking as per the education, the advanced Hindus who are 4th in population stands first, either in primary education, secondary education, or in college education, higher education. The intermediate classes which stands first in the population but stands 3rd in the order of the education. Whereas Muslims who stands 4th in population stands 2nd in the order of educational ranking. But the depressed classes who stand 2nd in the population but stands 4th in the order of educational ranking. And advanced sections which stand 4th in the population but stand first in education, primary, secondary, college. In those days he made comparative analysis of advancement in the advanced sections, advance of education of different sections, and made a strong case that government has to apply a kind of a principle which is a kind of an unequal treatment or a preferential treatment which is for the backward sections which most deserve it. He was making that point. That is the point I try to say. And education is seen as an important instrument for the development of the people and for the development of the nation, which everybody knows, of course, as on date. And in this regard, our country still has to make a lot of effort for the educational advancement of all these sections, particularly deprived sections. That is the point I try to say. And another one. Now, when you come to the question of is developmental strategy, is a plan of economic development. You know, as you know, it has a very clear-cut plan of development. That is, actually, before I go for that, I should also discuss. I have finished with the time. Yeah. I should also discuss in brief that his views on Indian agriculture. his monumental work on small holdings and its remedies in India, 1918, Indian Society of Agricultural Economics, wherein he published that. See, there was a lot of discussion in India that in India was characterized by large number of small holdings and marginal holdings, and productive is very low. At that time, productive was very low. Eminent economists like G. and Director of Bombay Agriculture Keating, and a committee appointed by the Baroda State, that is committee is called as RBC committee. All these were discussing the problems of the small holdings in India, and the productivity is low because they strongly believe that there are very small holdings and scattered holdings. Interestingly, of course, the size of the holding and the productivity, A.K. Sen has started in 1962 that a debate, and came with a conclusion that the productivity inversely varies with the size of the holding. That is in 1962. But Ambekar, somewhere in 1917, somewhere like that, he published in 18. He has started this debate, that he has examined whether really productivity was low on account of the small size of the holdings, because they are scattered, something like that. He has examined that. He has put forth his own analysis. See, actually, how to consolidate the holdings, how to increase the size of the holdings. These were the questions, and that committee and other professors whom I mentioned just now, they came out with a conclusion that although there are minor differences, they come out with a conclusion that it is better to go for one-man rule of succession, particularly when the division leads to a kind of an uneconomic holding. And see, this is what they have suggested. Go for one-man holding, others will be disposed of. Of course, in one scheme, the disposal persons will have some compensation. In other scheme, there is no compensation for the disposal persons. So this is what they suggested. And at the same time, they were also trying to understand that this economic holding means from the point of view of the consumption. An holding is said to be an economic holding provided it enables the farming family to produce enough to maintain a comfortable life for his whole family, something like that they were defining. That is from the point of view of consumption. Ambedkar says it should not be defined from the point of view of consumption, it should be defined from the point of view of the production. Because if you go by the consumption, even when the investment pays for the return, necessary return, there is a danger that you may declare them as failures. Because in a family, some are unproductive, some do not have any work. But if you apply this definition, even if the investment pays for the return, if it cannot meet the consumption requirement of everybody who is idle sometimes, you may declare that as a kind of a failure. Therefore, you should go for a production point of view. Production point of view means, here again is there interesting contribution here is that, see, if you should take into account the factors of production. Of course, in the neoclassical theory, we have been arguing that optimum combination of factors of production, something like that, which depends upon the elasticity of substitution. Ambedkar discussed in those days, wherein he was arguing that it is not simply the land, other factors of production. That is, a farmer, what kind of agricultural implements, agricultural capital, agricultural implements, what it has, which are combined with the land, that matters. Mere size of the land does not convey any meaning unless he has an adequate other agricultural implements. You can't make a case that there is a need for rising the size of the holding. And on the basis of the data he collected from the Baroda State, with the help of some studies, he was showing that for a certain period, there was a decline in the agricultural implements in relation to the size of the holding. Therefore, he was making a case, what you require is not increasing the size of the holding as a matter of fact. What we have to do is to increase the size of the agricultural implements, not the holding. There is no need of increasing the holding, because agricultural holding without agricultural implements it does not say, it does not, it can't be an economic holding. Because whether it is an economic holding or not, it depends not on the mere size, it depends on the fact that in what proportion you are combining the factors of production with the other factors of production in the land. That matters. Therefore, he says, not mere size does not can't be you can't say that large holding is always economic holding. Belief at that time was that large holdings are economic holdings, therefore you have to enlarge. That was they were arguing. But Ambedkar was arguing that mere size does not can't be on the basis of mere size, you can't say that it is an economic holding. It depends upon the other factors of production, particularly agricultural implements a farmer has. In India, what is immediate need is that you have to need, that you require lot of agricultural implements. This is another important contribution. Secondly, at that time, also says that most of the, Indian small holdings agricultural problems is that too much of dependence on agriculture. Idle labor, Marx used the term surplus labor, he used the term idle labor. Idle labor. Here, in the case of Indian agriculture, he has also estimated 2/3 of the population depends on agriculture, of which at least 1/3 can be said to be an idle labor force. So the person he was saying that this is not the problem of law of inheritance. The problem is not fundamental in the law of inheritance, but it is because of the fact that Indian farmers do not have anything else to choose. Therefore, they are trying to pick up some land, whatever piece of land they are getting, they are trying to. It is leading to the subdivision, fragmentation, and afterwards a kind of a scattered holdings, something like that. The main problem lies in the social economy, maladjustments in the social economy. Therefore, it is not his mistake. It is a compulsion. He does not have any alternative. Therefore, he is depending on the land. So, what we have to do is, we have to develop the alternative avenues, non-farming avenues. We should shift this population to the non-farming avenues. In those days, he was making a strong case for the rapid industrialization, and he has seen rapid industrialization, non-farming activity is only the solution for this agricultural development in India. Unless you develop it, the people continue to depend on agriculture, and the small holding problems will persist. That is what he was telling. And lastly, of course, in 1947, this is my last point. In 1947, he was advocating collectivization of agriculture. Because in such states and minorities, he has advocated that you should have a kind of a parliamentary democracy through a law of constitution, whereby you can avoid a dictatorship, and at the same time you can establish state socialism. And therefore he was advocating a kind of a state socialism, whereby all the basic and key industries under the control of the state. Agriculture is also supposed to be under the control of the state, and agriculture will be organized as a collective farming. This was his proposal. And he has given a big scheme. I am not reading it, I have given in my paper. Here his argument is that state should have a kind of an economic obligation to see that the economic life of the people are organized in such a way that leads to the highest point of productivity without closing every avenue to the private sector, and providing for